Live across Perth and WA.
This is Afternoons on ABC Radio Perth and WA.
There is a cyber summit happening in Perth this week. Love it or hate it, so much of our lives are played out on the internet. We share our news, we maintain friendships, and generally spend far too much time scrolling. We even fall in love. What might start out as a seemingly innocent chat via an online messaging app can bloom into full-blown catastrophe for many people, and those conducting romance scams do so in a chillingly surgical way. Edith Cowan University's Dr Oliver Guidetti is the creator of FakeDate game, a tool designed to get you romance scam fit, as it were. Hello, Oliver.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell me about FakeDate game. How does it work?
Sure. So FakeDate is designed to be, well, it's a card game, fundamentally, sort of like how Cards Against Humanity works.
Okay.
Part of the problem with romance scam awareness campaigns at the moment is they're not really experienced. Romance scams are things that are experienced, whereas a lot of the information that's out there is stuff that's just read. Watch out for this, watch out for that. So a lot of the success that these romance scammers have is that most people don't know when this is happening to them. So the FakeDate game allows someone to start playing this game. So rather than saying, oh, hey, Dad, look, that looks like a bit of a scam there, what that allows is the victim themselves to see, oh, actually, hang on, this way of talking to people is not normal. This is what a scammer can start to sound like and start to actually look like in a conversation. The idea is that we can look at upskilling the most vulnerable people in our society who fall prey to these types of scammers, so that tragedies like your friend, that those don't get to that point. People become aware of what kind of attacker is out there and why they also might be victims as well.
How does the typical romance scam unfold? What are the steps they take?
Well, depending upon the victim, it can progress quite quickly as well. So what ends up, the way that these things play out is that first there's a stage of ingratiation and rapport building where the person will be flattered a lot. The conversation seems to be like too good a deal, really. People buy into that very quickly, especially because these romance scammers, they're really targeting loneliness. That's really the vulnerability. Like cybersecurity, they talk a lot about vulnerabilities. Well, this is a human vulnerability. It's just a completely different type of attack. So they'll go through a process of gaining the victim's trust, and it'll then eventually start to morph into small requests that then become bigger requests and bigger requests. There's a sunken cost fallacy associated with it as well. People are
What does sunken cost fallacy mean?
Sunken cost fallacy is that essentially the more invested a person emotionally becomes in that romance scammer's trap, the harder it is to pull them out of it. So how do you really talk to someone in that instance? It's hard to pull them back, whereas with the FakeDate game, it allows them to pull themselves back much more efficiently than saying, look, it's not normal to hope that this person that you're going to go travelling overseas to meet exists. It's not normal to start sending money to someone you haven't met. You might trust them, but is that trust valid? Should you be trusting that particular person? Because this is all a figment of your imagination behind a computer screen.
So let's pretend we're playing FakeDate card game.
Sure. We
deal each other a hand of cards. So how many cards do I get?
Sure. So you can play it one-on-one or you can play it in groups.
Yeah.
So you'll get 5 cards each. Yeah. And the way that it works is this. So imagine you're out at a party and a friend comes up to you who is new to online dating. And they show you a snippet of a conversation and they ask you the question quite innocently, oh, do you reckon I've got a chance? What do you think of this? Now, the way the game works is quite simple. So you read a small snippet of a conversation and you then have to guess, does this person get a date? Do they not get a date? Or is this a scam? So you get a point if you correctly identify whether it's a date, no date, or a scam. But you lose all of your points, much like in real life, if you fail to identify the scam. But there's another level to it as well. So when we look at victims of romance scams, they fall into several different types of buckets. So we have, we have adults who end up sort of more mature, they've got more money to steal. That's one particular type of demographic. But the younger demographic, they are targeted quite prevalently. They've got less money to steal, but that's why it's a volume crime. You might be only able to take them for a couple $100, but at scale, that can turn into a significant payday for a scammer. So the idea behind FakeDate is that if we can address this problem young and start to upskill people when they're young, well, then that will translate into cyber well-being down the track. But there's an additional benefit too. On the back of every card, it explains why an interaction is a scam or not. But for the interactions that lead to a date or no date, it also explains why those things happen. So, for example, there's a significant problem in the world at the moment with incivility online, especially incivility directed towards women. So what this allows is for a teacher in a classroom, they can use FakeDate. We can have a discussion about those romance scammers and beware, of course. But it also allows for a discussion about, well, what kind of interactions are associated with actually getting a date? Because it's not going to be one where there's incivility. It's going to be one where there's manners, where there's mutual respect, mutual sharing of likes and things like that. When there's no date associated with an outcome, well, that's also even better because we can discuss, well, what's not there? What's not there is going to be vulgar language. There's not going to be character attacks. It's not going to become incivil. Now, when we can do that in a school setting, that can then translate upwards and outwards into society when these kids do grow up and start using these things. It sort of cuts the problem off before it metastasizes and becomes a problem. Because another problem with incivility online, it's not something that there's a role model for. You know, kids grow up and they'll see how mum and dad interact and those sorts of behaviours. They translate to a great extent, civil or uncivil, when kids grow up and to be adults. But there are no role models for online dating. No child sees, really, how their mum or how their dad talks to the opposite sex online. So there's an absence of role modelling. And that in and of itself is a problem because when you've got this sort of vacuum of information, that can lead to things like frustration and behavioural outbursts and what have you. FakeDate now means that it doesn't have to be that case. You've now got an implement that a teacher can use in a school, a carer can use in an old age facility to actually start to implement behaviour change. So it's going beyond just being aware of cyber scammers and beyond being aware of how one should act. You're now translating that into behavioural readiness. Are you actually able to go out into the world and behave appropriately, not just with scammers, but with the opposite sex as well in a respectful way?
Someone of my age group, I heard them say that at my age, 58, trying to find someone to date online was like trying to find the least broken thing at the tip.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible.
I think I'd have a lot of people agree with me. You know, and I'm in the very fortunate position of, you know, being happily married, and my heart genuinely goes out to someone who is lonely and having a chat to someone online and then very quickly being taken for granted. So you've touched a little bit on the sort of person who is vulnerable to romance scams. My assumption would be older. You know, is that correct? You have also said young ones is scale, but can you describe the typical person who is targeted?
Sure. So the typical person who's targeted, first of all, they are lonely, but there's more to the vulnerability than just loneliness. They'll be trusting. Essentially, they'll be sweethearts at heart.
Oh, God.
It's going to be the person who falls victim to these attacks are going to be naturally trusting. They're going to be the sort of person that believes things that you really ought not to, at the very least, question. For example, one of the cards in the dating fake date game, the way that the conversation plays out is that the fictitious conversation, the scammer's mother has fallen ill and needs a couple of $100, you know, just to send her in an Uber to an expensive hotel somewhere away. A couple of $100 isn't that much, but at scale that is a lot. But it's also a foot in the door. If I can get someone to give me $100, well, can I get them to give me 1,000? Can I get them to give me 10,000?
Yeah.
Can it start to accumulate? And because these people are so trusting naturally, on top of the loneliness issue and the desire to not be in this quagmire of online dating, the desire to essentially escape this loneliness, that just adds to that vulnerability more and more and more. It's not a surprise to me that this is something that affects young and old.
You're listening to Amber Cunningham on ABC Radio Perth and WA. I'm speaking with Edith Cowan University's Dr Oliver Guidetti. He's the creator of FakeDate game, and he's taking part in the Cyber Summit happening in Perth today. What are some of the ways to spot a scammer?
Some of the ways to spot a scammer is if the deal is too good to be true, start to question things. If the deal, which sounds a bit pessimistic, but that genuinely is a feature of these scammers. The deal will be too good to be true. The conversation will also progress really rapidly. What ends up happening is these victims interpret that rapid escalation of what they think is a connection and intimacy. What that actually is that's how the trap works. The trap is closing around you. The dark side of that is that really these are behaviors and things that, like, at face value, they sound like good things. I've met someone online, isn't that lovely? Oh, look, they're a lovely person. You know, they flatter me like a lot. They'll often say things that then these people won't be hearing in their day-to-day lives. You're attractive, you're funny, you're nice, you're whatever. If they're not hearing it out in the real world as well, there's a sense of self-esteem that is also being preyed upon. The conversations will progress rapidly, and then you'll start to see questions like foot in the door types of questions. Or another thing to look out for is they'll ask you to get off the platform very quickly. Can we have... Yeah. Can we hop on a video chat? Oh, I'm sorry, my webcam's broken. That's another very pernicious way that these things play out, especially for younger sorts of victims, because that then leads to entrapment. Someone takes a picture of something that most people wouldn't want publicized. Now that then immediately turns into blackmail.
Now, somebody on the text line says, seriously, Amber, too long-winded, just don't do it. It's easy to say, but I think there are some people who are genuinely lonely and wanting companionship in whatever form it comes. I have a private Instagram account. I get a lot of requests from men who generally have a number after their name. And I mean, they're not anyone I know, and I don't accept friend requests from people I don't know. But I look through their profile. They're always handsome. They're frequently, got the American flag. They've got the fact that they believe in God on their profile. And when I look at the photographs on there, they're all been uploaded on the same day. So if anyone is on Instagram and that happens to you, just check their photographs that they've got. And if they've all been uploaded, within hours or days, it's like, that's a little bit sus. How much of a script do these scammers follow?
Oh, it's very copy and paste. I mean, we have, at the moment, we're lucky that it's only copy and paste because there are signatures, the common signatures that you can identify. They are following a script, and it changes from person to person a little bit depending upon who's being targeted.
Yeah.
But with the advent of AI, especially generative AI, it can be used far more to make these attacks far more personal, far more customized. Another thing that your listeners can do is they can take the images that they're looking at of this person's profile. They can go to Google and you can upload these pictures and see where else are these things uploaded. Because I can almost guarantee you, when you have reason to doubt why someone has these like, wow, too good to be true photos, it's because it's probably a catfish.
Yeah.
It's the sense, is this too good to be true? That's when you need to start being skeptical, very quickly. Another thing, if I could comment to your who was on the text line, it's very easy when I suppose to think, well, how could these things happen? But the people who are victimized by these types of scammers, they're at risk already, I suppose. So it's the victims themselves are almost, how can I phrase it? It's the perfect attack for someone of like who's lonely and who's too trusting.
What you've just described there too in the photographs, do a backward search on that, which some older folk might not know how to do. In fact, I don't know how to do that. But the friend of ours that was in question when the image of this woman that he believed himself to be falling in love with was somebody put it through a search engine and it had come from a porn site. So let's say we feel we might have a friend or a relative vulnerable to this kind of fraud. Is there any way you recommend intervening? Because I sense there's a lot of shame around this sort of thing. How can we intervene without startling or, making things worse?
Well, you're going to run into a couple of tricky parts. There will be shame. There will be denial. There will be potentially as well, very hurt feelings if this person thinks that the scammer that they're talking to actually genuinely cares about them. So there'll be a lot of resistance to that. So what I would actually encourage them to do is play FakeDate. And I would say to that person, if you see anything that sounds like what you've read, there's a hint there, because it's very difficult to pull someone back from that. So because you're going to end up arguing with that person. That person's not going to want to believe what you're talking about, despite your best of intentions. So part of the utility of FakeDate is that they can start to see, hang on, this is rinse and repeat,
yeah,
and I'm one of them. And that's when you can start to handle the fallout from that. Look, these things happen, and I'm sorry for that. You can start to handle the victim side of this particular attack, and then I suppose just be glad that it didn't progress to money, or worse, conceivably.
Dr Oliver Guidetti, thanks for your time today, and congratulations
Thank you so much
on your game. Ta.
Thank you.